Hello, everyone. Today we are going to be discussing whether or not students should be forced to take standardized tests and force them to go down the advanced courses pathway. There are many people around the world who have received different levels of education. Different countries provide various educational and learning environments for students. There are also different standards and levels of classes depending on the individual student. How is it that some students follow one path towards receiving one type of education while another student follows another? Who chooses these paths? And how do they test or evaluate the students on their current knowledge level? These are all valid questions that students and parents ask teachers and administrators all the time. Is their child going down the right path? Should they be in a higher education setting? Should they be in a lower education setting? So many students are being pressured into doing well on these exams to be able to get placed into these higher level programs, but for no reason other than they think it will benefit them down the road. These kids need to have a purpose in their life to do what is going to help them down the road in life and not what is going to be beneficial to the schools and the facilities. That is why I think it's very important to eliminate standardized testing and help the students make more informed decisions on whether or not advanced classes are the right decision for them. The first item that needs to be addressed is what does being educated mean? The word being educated means being characterized by displaying qualities of culture and learning. So as long as the student is learning information skills or just gaining experience, it is considered being educated in whatever they are trying to do. Naomi Hodgkinson stated, "The question of what it means to be an educated person is thereby released by a particular mode of accounting for thyself." This thought brings up the idea of how educated someone is based on what they think of themselves. However, a person thinks of themselves, therefore, is how intelligent they are. Education is very subjective and up for interpretation. There are definitely different levels of education, but it's a matter of what educated means to those particular individuals. There are many students who have gone down both the advanced class route, and there are many students who have gone down the regular education route. However, there will be students from both paths that can have better or worse jobs from each different path they went down. So people put pressures on people to do well on standardized testing so that they can be in the best program possible, when in reality that kind of stuff doesn't really matter in the long run. The path of education that a student is placed on will not be the end of the world for them once they are done getting an education and move on to their job and their career field of their choice. To start, a major way that a student is tested and assessed for knowledge is through standardized testing. A test of this nature is just a basic multiple choice test that has multiple different categories. These students are given a time limit for which the exam has to be completed, and the administrator simply puts the Scantron through a machine that will count up the number of incorrect and correct questions. It is obvious that the students take a standardized test would be a very quick and easy way to determine what a student does and does not know. For many students, the first state standardized test is given to them during the early elementary school, starting in 3rd grade. The scary part is that teachers and other school administrators are already giving these tests that are supposed to place children in an educational path in grade 3. These students are not being prepared well enough for these exams. Why not give parents the right to opt out of tests when they realize states have not done the work of guaranteeing their children are being adequately prepared for these exams? This is a very valid point that parents are making today. If they want to have all this testing and place all these pressures on these students to do well, then maybe they should cover the same material for all the levels of education. It is not right that the students who are in the advanced classes know more and are more prepared to take these state tests than the students in regular classes because they are further along in the curriculum or have learned more information than in the regular classes that would. That early in a child's life, they are already being placed on a track for how they will be for the rest of their educational careers of schooling are going to go. There's a lot of pressure being placed on these young students. Now, for the really young kids that are still in elementary school, they have no idea what these tests mean. But for the older kids, these tests mean a lot more to them, and therefore is a lot more pressure resting on their shoulders. These tests could make the difference between whether they are placed in an advanced class or, in more serious cases, if they will be able to get into the college that they want to go to. According to the grant makers of education, annual tests in grade 3 through 8 and once again in high school have been required for more than a decade under the federal No Child Left Behind Act. Each child is being tracked every year through their middle years of schooling to determine the route which they will take to move on into high school. The two most common routes that a student will go on is college-bound or non-college bound. Those that score high on these tests will go to a college, while those who do not will be looking to find a job with no college degree needed or going on to a trade school. This is not fair to any of the students that their future should not be based upon how well they do on a couple multiple choice tests during a few days of their life. It should be based on how well they do in all the classes over a much longer period of time. A better way would be track progress reports at the end of each school year or, if necessary, at each semester. But do not make it based off a few tests issued by the government. If on average how well they perform in class and participate on discussion should be a big determination on how ready they are for college, not off some silly government test. A student should be a student should really be assessed on how well they do when applying their knowledge to real life situations. That is really what school should be preparing you for, is how to use material they learn in class to real life rather than preparing them for a test. How to use the material they learn in class to real life rather than for a test. How these tests may not directly determine whether a person goes to college or not, it will affect the types of classes they take. While some classes will set a student up for great success for college, others will be just enough for the student to learn enough information to pass the test and the assignments and given essentially get an overall passing grade at the end of the semester. Standardized testing is not a very effective way for administrators to decide on whether or not a student is going to go to college or not. Does it really matter once you're out of school whether a person went down the advanced path or a regular path? There's no way to give a definite answer to that. Some people say advanced classes were very helpful to their success in getting into college and doing well afterwards, and there are also people that claim that advanced classes did not help them out in the long run. They only caused more work for them and got the same results as students that went to college that went down the regular general education path. According to a research experiment, of the participants who took advanced classes, 85% indicate their academic experience in these classes were positive. 14% indicated that their academic experience was negative, and 1% indicated that their experience in the class was neutral. The majority of the students that said it was a good learning time in those classes, however, they did not say whether or not it was helpful in the long run for them. Also, many students who still go down to college and have a successful career without these classes. The point that is being made is that there are high pressures for students to be in advanced classes, but in reality, all that matters is how hard the student is willing to work to receive for their education. What are the advantages and disadvantages of taking AP classes? At my high school, for example, all AP or accelerated courses, there was an extra honor point awarded towards your GPA at the end of each semester. The most difficult thing to do is try and determine if taking the harder class is worth getting the extra honor point or not. Would the student have been able to get a higher grade in a regular class than you would have in an advanced class, even with the extra honor point? In many cases, the regular classes could be considered an easy A for most students, but when they get to a higher level class, they struggle. That is why it's a tough decision for students who are on the edge of the class paths. For the students who do very well and are at the top of their class of the regular education path will most likely get placed into the advanced classes. Not all of those students will be able to succeed as well as those classes that would be in the regular. The last point that I would like to bring up is that there is so much pressure on the students to do well, they look at doing the schoolwork just for a grade. They do not care about actually learning the information, and it's all about just doing the bare minimum in order to get a grade. I know from personal experience that there are students who just do or even copy the work just to get it done. They are not going to learn the valuable information needed for further education. It is even said by Procon, instruction time is being consumed by mindless test preparation. Some schools allocate more than a quarter of the year's instruction to test prep. Students are more focused on learning the material to pass the test and not apply that information to real life. In addition, the teachers are spending too much time on these state school required tests that is taking away from the actual curriculum instruction time. This is doing a disservice to the community of the school because they are not going to get the opportunity to be exposed and take advantage of the amount of information and material that is right in front of them. If the kids stopped having to focus on being given a letter grade and compete for it, then maybe it will result in more intelligent students and possibly higher graduation rates for not only high school, but for college as well. The schools and states put a lot of time and pressure into making sure a student is on and follows a strict path throughout their educational careers. Being educated is determined by each individual person. The definition of being educated is not the same for every person, to take the term lightly, and see how the person feels about education. Kids are being placed into different levels of classes because they do well or poorly on a standardized exam. That should not be the case because of the type of education someone receives should be up to them. If a student thinks they can handle a heavier course load, then let them have it, but do not make them feel pressured into thinking that they have to be in a higher level class because that is what society thinks is best for them. In the long run, it does not matter what type of class you are placed in, it matters on how much effort the person puts into learning the information for whichever class they are in. Lastly, teachers and administrators need to lay back on putting so much pressure on young teens and having to do well for their class grade on a test. Just let the students focus on being students and absorb as much information as they can in the time frame allotted to them. So in conclusion, the states should ban standardized testing and should allow students the choice of whether or not they want to go down the educational path of advanced or regular.